This morning, Monday, August the 26th, as promised in this serial run of relic shows, beginning with the absolutely astonishing burial cloths of Christ. We did 2 shows in a row on last show, the Sudarium of Oviedo, the facial cloth, burial cloth of Jesus. And before that, the Shroud of Turin. Amazing, amazing relics that defy the imagination. Really, they don't defy science. Folks say that they defy science. They don't do that because science just says, yes, we confirm these things as miraculous. Then now they say it quietly, but it's not a defiance of modern science. It just says, yeah, we have no way of accounting for the shroud, no way of accounting for the face cloth, the Sudarium of Oviedo. Well, I promised you as I did those shows that the most astonishing relic that Christianity has to offer the world, the most astonishing piece of material evidence, article on earth of anything, is the Tilma of Guadalupe. This is what a small version of it that we have up in our kitchen because of Mexican, right, Steph?
That's right. Amen.
Because of half Mexican. I mean, just because it's the most amazing thing, Mexican or not. Olay. It's just amazing. I'm going to break this out a few times, and we're going to get into specifics on today's episode. The Tilma of Guadalupe dates to 1531, December the 12th, 1531. It's absolutely astonishing. I learned stuff. It's always been the most astonishing of all relics to me, but I learned some more aspects of it that are just even more unbelievable. And it just doesn't, like I said, it doesn't defy science. It doesn't defy philosophy. There's no violation of like the principle of the excluded middle. What it does is it defies the modern imagination. And by modern, I mean 16th and 17th century subsequent imagination. Because the Protestant Reformation and the Enlightenment made it virtually impossible for moderns and postmoderns in the 21st century to imagine that faith and reason aren't contraposed. Even if you're Catholic and you're like, well, my faith and my reason aren't contraposed. Pope John Paul II wrote this encyclical called Fides et Ratio, and it evinces a thoroughgoing concomitance throughout all of the history of Christendom, of the Christian intellect and the Christian, will in the Christian faith. Not a contraposition. Okay, cool. You know that. But then even Catholics are tempted to say, well, but are they really like these magic-like Legend of Zelda relics that we have? And they'll always ask me, I got this question a bunch after I went on Noel's show last week, and after I did the first show, before I went on Noel's show here on Rules for Retrogrades, on the Shroud. Well, why doesn't everyone just believe them? Doesn't this leave no challenge for the faith? Well, yes. Pope Pius IX and Pope Leo XIII, both at the end of the 19th century, affirmed that the knowability of God, of one God, is fixed by the intellect. It has nothing to do with faith. So you've been hoodwinked by a modern Protestant and Enlightenment canard. The notion that faith is supposed to be some sort of challenge, epistemic challenge, that diminishes any degree of certitude you've ever had in the reality of Christ as the second person of the Trinity, or even that there's an existence of the first person of the Trinity or third. That's not what faith is. Jesus did signs to make his followers certain Yeah, they were young of faith, like St. Paul says. That's why you do signs and miracles. But it doesn't mean it's bad, and it definitely doesn't mean that faith and reason should be contraposed. So yes, precisely. Parish orphans and retrogrades, faith and reason are absolutely concomitant. They're not contraposed to one another. And so while they're not many, there are a few magic items that for those who are young of faith, this really works wonders for. And it just puts me in a good mood to talk about the Tilma, the Sudarium, especially the Tilma, but the shroud and some of the amazing relics that I once lived half a mile from in Rome. A couple of the nails that went into our Lord's hand, the INRI headboard, Doubting Thomas's finger. Those were all at Holy Cross over Jerusalem. My favorite of the 7 basilicas of Rome. So in today's show, I'm going to give you the whole count. I'm going to give you the whole count on why the Tilma of Guadalupe should make anybody a believing, practicing Christian, at least, and one who loves the Theotokos. I mean, become Catholic, but at least don't become Christian and just stay at that kind of retarded entree of Protestantism. I mean, at the very least, become someone that loves the Theotokos, a Catholic or an Orthodox. Become Catholic today. And I'll give you so many good reasons. The shroud is the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. I've never been to Mexico City, obviously, because I'm sitting here still alive. I'm sorry, the Tilma. If I'd gone to Mexico City, I would have been fallen upon, slaughtered, and eaten because it's like the most dangerous country on earth. But the Tilma is absolutely amazing. Can we do, what picture do we have up now? It's like a picture of it's a picture of the picture that we have up in our kitchen. And I just want to start laying some facts on you. There were multiple apparitions. Unlike Fatima, unlike Lourdes, unlike Zaytun, Egypt, the apparitions that we're going to be talking about began almost day after day consecutive. December 9th, 1531, December 10th, 1531, December 11th, St. Juan Diego had like a sick relative, so he didn't go visit him. But the December 12th is the key date where he was given the Tilma because he'd gone and picked roses, and she left him this unbelievable, miraculous image that has no elemental explanation for its colors. The colors aren't made of paint. The colors are not made of dye. The colors are not made of thread. There are no brush strokes. The colors are not even overlain on the substratum of the cactus cloth, which is what the Tilma is. We're going to get all the detail in a second, but I just want to give you the overview. The overview is that if you view the real Tilma, here's some of the big facts. If you view the real Tilma from less than 10 inches away, the color disappears. It's holographic. Now, the color hovers 0.3 of a millimeter above the cactus cloth. And you can see this if you go to the side. It's just hovers there. It's not elemental. It's not made of anything. Not made of any vegetative byproduct. No animal byproduct. It's not made of an element. NASA's tested this thing. Nobel Prize winning chemists have tested this thing. I'm going to read all the names. I'm going to give you all the dates in today's show. But the point is that color you're looking at, but particularly this beautiful, I love green. It's my favorite color, and blue-green was always my other favorite color. Artists can't even reproduce this color of aquamarine. It's like a magic color. I thought this was part of the legendarium of the shroud. It's true. They can't reproduce this color that she's wearing. And it's not real color because there's not a platonic form of a color. A color's not a thing. There's not a red or a turquoise. Color is an accidental property that attaches to a substance. Well, here it's funny. It's just light. The color has wave properties, not particle properties, because if you look 0.3 of a millimeter above the shroud, it's hovering like a hologram, and it's not made of anything. And if you look at it from less than 10 inches, you can't see anything on the cloth. The stars that are around, surrounding Our Lady, of course, the image really is the image of a kind of mestizo version of Our Lady from Revelation, with the moon at her feet, stars as her crown. The stars are also all around her. And here you'll notice the constellations are precisely where they were. They're mostly the zodiac constellations, are precisely where they were on the night of December the 12th, 1531. Exactly. What happens is kind of like if you like Stranger Things, November 6th, 1983, got frozen in time when Will Byers went there. Everything involving the imagery of the shroud itself is like a frozen in time copy of December 12th, 1531. So when you look into her eyes, which look closed from back there, they're not closed. They're barely open. Just a sliver of her eyes are open, and the eyes have some of the properties that have astounded me to my core, shocked me to my core. Both of them reflect 13 characters. These are microscopic images. They didn't have computer technology then. And they have the triple characteristics of eyes. We'll go through what those are. And they reflect the people that were there as she gave the tilma to Juan Diego. Bishop Zumarraga and a family and a Spaniard with a heavy beard. And they're reflected at the exact trigonometric distance that they would, because one eye is usually closer to what they're both perceiving. Do you understand? So it's like if you watch Stranger Things, the Upside Down being frozen on November 6th, 1983, when Will went there. Our Lady froze the stars. You can see the stars around her shroud. They're in the exact constellation that was up at that exact time of the night on December 12th, 1531. And in her eyes, they didn't even know this for several years, is a reflection of all the people that were there as she presented this thing to Juan Diego. So it's like a relic of a relic. It's a self-referential relic. It's like an M.C. Escher painting, because it's a relic of what was happening as she made this apparition to St. Juan Diego and as she gave him this miraculous piece of cloth. It was supposed to decay after about 30 years. It hasn't done so. That's typical of, uncorruptibles and things like that. It's got a heartbeat. It's got a heartbeat. It's 98.6 degrees whenever they measure it. The eye, this is another thing with the eyes. The pupils dilate and contract when you shine light on them. There's so much more. We're going to go through it all systematically. Steph, you're showing the pictures of all the 13 people that are in her eyes. This non-elemental color at a microscopic level in 1531 and at an astronomical level, reflecting the stars that are out that time of the night on December 12th, 1531. Things got a heartbeat. It's 98.6 degrees. The pupils dilate and expand. There's a lot more. And so what happens that I want you folks to consider before, I make some introductions and then get into the particulars, the nitty gritty, is that normies will say, the IQ 98s out there will say, well, why haven't I heard about this, man? I'm sure science debunks it. No, NASA's had a look at this thing, dozens of scientists, and the honest ones are like, wow, this is incredible. This is basically magic. That's all it is. And then the less than honest ones do whatever, like the kind of Joe Rogan thing. You're just at center at the beginning of every show. The kind of more right-wing guy convinces Joe during the course of his 8-hour show or whatever of something that should make Joe a more committed right-winger. And he's like, that's cool, man. And then just by the next show, he's just back at center again. Quotidian dementia. That's what normies do. And that's what normie scientists do. So they're like, okay, I studied that thing. I couldn't figure out. The color's not made of anything. Yeah, and it had a heartbeat and is 98.6 degrees. Oh, and Mary has living eyes. Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mary, has living eyes in it. The pupils expand and contract. It seems magic. But then they just go whatever, plug in for the night or whatever, power down the way normies do. They don't ever have a hard time sleeping. And they wake up the next morning and they're like, well, okay. And they're like, so did you like convert to Catholicism and go, venerate the Theotokos and say a bunch of Hail Marys? They're like, no. I don't believe in that stuff. You're like, well, what about the science you told us? And normie consumers of pop science like that are the same way. They're Joe Rogan. They're all just right at dead center. They might be convinced over the course of a conversation because they can't gainsay what they're hearing. They can't account for it, right? They can't justify their countervailing position. They can't gainsay it. They can't account for it by any of their pre-existing categories of kind of normie, I like Marvel comic book movie. I like eat Zog Slop and go to bed and I watch whatever they watch and I just fall right asleep and I wake up in Normieville, Palookaville suburbs, USA. And then I go to my job and I kind of plug into my cubicle and I just don't really believe anything. And I just make fun of conservatives that are actually trying to conserve anything. But I say I'm kind of conservative. Whatever it is to be a normie, they don't. You can't do that with the Tilma. You can't really do it with the Shroud of Turin either, but they'll just say, well, the 1988 carbon dating, that kind of, I don't know what they say. But the Tilma is even more invulnerable to normieism because it's just like a living thing with a heartbeat and eyes, and all the scientists are like, yeah, that's just what it is. And if they're normie or leaning, me and my brother call them militant moderates in Rules for Retrogrades. The militant moderates can't account for this thing, but they just put it out of their mind. But when you bring it up with them, they're like, I'm sure modern science will disprove this or something. Like idiot Lawrence Krauss, the atheist's response in Robert Sungenis's documentary, The Principle, like idiot Lawrence Krauss's response to The Principle, which is Wolfgang Smith and others demonstrating that via the use of the cosmic microwave background radiation, that Earth and her solar system are at the smack dab center of the universe, rebut it. And Krauss is like, well, I can't, but, I don't know, maybe, you just, God of the gaps or whatever. Maybe someday we'll be able to rebut it. And they just don't move. It's the Joe Rogan experience. Oh, to be the mirthless laughter of the normie, the mirthless laughter of the damned. Same thing. You got to move where the information moves, you people. And that's what we're all about here on Rules for Retrogrades.